And good morning once again, and welcome back to our special coverage of the nationwide protest. It's the hashtag End Bad Governance protest. We have just witnessed the president's address to the nation, which comes after 3 days of intense demonstrations calling for change and accountability.
Now, joining us to provide analysis and reactions to the president's speech, we have an array of guests. And of course, we'll also be turning to our correspondents across Nigeria who have witnessed the events that have taken place inside of the protests from all across the country, here in Lagos to the north and the far reaches of Nigeria. We've just witnessed the president's address where he addressed many issues that the youth have been clamoring for, some of which include, well, very many issues that have been on the tongues of the people or the citizens. However, one thing to note was his call for a violent-free protest, where he told that, well, it is your right to protest, but still asking for the nation to be calm, exercise your right, however, make sure that it is violent-free. And a call out to all the miscreants who might be usurping the protests across Nigeria to cease and make sure that this is a proper procession. After addressing that, he also addressed issues regarding the nation's economy, financing the youth and youth empowerment programs, some of which we'll be taking an analysis of throughout today's course of the show. Well, Judith, good morning to you. Good to have you.
Very good morning to you as well. Of course, good to have you two on the show here this morning. Yeah.
It's been 3 days. Finally, the president has addressed.
Oh, yes, it has. And finally, he has indeed addressed it. It's very interesting that we must also point out that this speech was leaked on social media. It was already circulating on social media 7 or thereabout 9 hours before the speech went live. And so many Nigerians had seen what the speech would be and sort of anticipated it, and it leaked. So it's very interesting to see how that happened, that it was able to be leaked on social media. But what's interesting was that the tone of the speech that he gave specifically to the economy, I want to see whether it will allay the fears of Nigerians, especially protesters, their grievances, if it's able to put to rest what they are clamoring for, that change that they need in terms of bad governance. So we wait to see what that would be for them.
I want to take a look at, since you're on the economy, some of the issues that he spoke about regarding the economy and financing the economy since after the past 14 months. He talked about the billions secured to help empower young ones in the tech sector, which is a very big sector currently, especially that this is a youth movement. That seemed like it was rather kind of like very deliberate. He talked about 570 billion naira released to states to support businesses. I'm not sure exactly if we have full detail of these releases to the different states to actually help the youngins when it comes to the support in businesses regarding tech. And he talked about 75,000 beneficiaries of business loans. Not sure if they have received these business loans or if it's something that's been anticipated or out there already. And also, finally, he spoke about the national minimum wage, which is very contentious because people don't regard that as minimum wage. We had the guest from the NLC the other day, and remember what he referred to it as?
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting there we go. That's the term that he used to describe it, starvation allowance.
Regarding that, there have been plenty of monies borrowed to be able to accommodate this, and still we've had calls from states that say that they are unable to pay these minimum wages, and many more might follow is the argument. So we also wait to see exactly how these will be interpreted inside of, well, executed when the time comes. There's plenty more that he touched on, and one thing I found very interesting was the application of CNG regarding powering the nation. He talked about saving 2 trillion naira from fuel importations. We still have a problem with our fuel or petroleum sector, especially with the back and forth or the debacle regarding the Dangote refineries. So there's so much to be unpacked inside of today's show, especially when we get our guests to come talk about the details of what they have heard from the president's address.
Absolutely. And also what's interesting was that he called an end. He asked that the protests come to an end and that he's working tirelessly behind the scenes, and all of this schemes and all of the policies, the monetary policy committee and all of the economic decisions that have had to be made to steer the nation out of where it is at the moment. And also, it's instrumental that, first of all, that it takes time to be into fruition. And so he asked for protesters to leave. So will they leave? Will they leave the streets? Will they go back home? Will the demonstrations stop nationwide? That is the question we're going to be asking as well. Is this speech enough? We've asked for the speech. We've clamored for the speech. We asked for him to address the nation. He has indeed heeded to the call, although albeit 3 days after, and he has addressed the nation. But is that enough to end the protests, the nationwide protests across the nation? We wait to see come today, Sunday, the 4th of August, 2024. It's the hashtag End Bad Governance protest coverage live for day 4. You just watched the presidency speech. We're going to take a short break so we can establish with our analyst that would join us later on during the course of the show, so we can get in depth into the several reforms and initiatives that the president has mentioned, and how visible are they, and will that mean that the protesters will stop, drop their placards, and go back home? Only time will tell. To be hi and welcome back. Good morning to you and welcome. It's still the hashtag End Bad Governance day 3 as we continue to, or rather day 4, as we continue to give you the live broadcast and live coverage of the End Bad Governance protest. Now, just earlier on at 7 a.m. sharp this Monday, this morning, Sunday morning, the President Bola Tinubu addressed the nation, and he has mentioned several reforms and several strategies that his administration is taking to steer the nation out of economic decline and also to prosperity. He also made mention of some reforms as well as strategies. And to that effect, we're going to be joined by our analyst. They'll be joining us live via video chat to discuss with us on the speech that the president just gave, to give their overall impression of the speech and also whether or not it addressed the core demands of this protest. And also, to get started very quickly, let's introduce our first guest for today. And he joins us live from Abuja. Our very first guest is Timothy. Let me just get that name correctly, please, so that I do not mess it up. There we go. Anthony Estefanos. He is a legal practitioner, and he joins me live from Abuja. Timothy, many thanks, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
For giving me the privilege to join.
Thank you. We're also being joined by Dr. Jeleli Adebiyi. He's a scholar and practitioner, and he joins us live as well via video chat. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to engage the conversation.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good to have you guys on with us. So we've seen the president's address, and I'm going to ask both of you what you thought about it. A cursory view, first of what you thought about the address before we start going into the details of it. Let's start with you, Mr. Jeleli, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I listened to the address live, and I felt it fell short, being empathetic. When there is a problem, the first thing to do is to win over the trust of those that are protesting. And what they've been talking about is that the level of hardship in the country is unparalleled, that hardship is killing them. That is one recurring thing in all the protest grounds that we have listened to and that we have read on the pages of newspaper. Everybody is complaining about hardship, squeezing life out of them. And when you look at the issue of hardship, it requires empathy, because we know that the problems cannot be addressed immediately. And the best way the president could have started his speech was to have been empathetic with the people, sympathizing with them, and rolling out some quick wins to show that the government is trying to do things differently. The government also went about the speech by assuming that the people that are in this protest are not aware of what has been done. And I think the speechwriter and Mr. President got that wrong as well. What the people are saying is that what you are doing is not working. So the solution to winning over the protesting citizen is not to talk about what you are doing again. Instead, is to talk about the fact that you are going to be revisiting some of the things that you are doing. Because you ought to have taken the protest as a feedback regarding what they've been doing and the lack of effect of what they've been doing on the overall well-being condition of the people. Rather than acknowledge the fact that we saw this as a feedback, I will be using the feedback to rethink and revisit some of what we've been doing. Mr. President went around regurgitating the same thing, policies that people have been complaining about, that form the basis, the foundation of the ongoing protest. And the other area where I also feel the president did well and could have done better as well was to have recognized the need for us to work in unison as a country, even when we disagree. The need for us to maintain peace and order and to ensure the sanctity and protection of lives and properties of the government and of the private citizens as well. However, Mr. President fell short, recognizing that those that have died, he could have better sympathized with the families of those that lost their beloved one, and further had that the country is going to be investigating the circumstances surrounding their death. Dwell more on the need for us to protect lives and property, which I believe is in order. However, he fell short, injecting that human touch that could win over the minds of millions. And he got something wrong. The right thing he got wrong is to assume that those that are on the streets are just protesters. Many of those that did not join them on the street, they have the backings, the protesters of their backings, and they enjoy their sentiment, and they believe that those that are protesting are the ones that are bold enough to go to the streets and call attention of the president, of the government at all levels, to the strangulating condition of things in the country. I also feel that the president didn't understand that. He focuses more on those that are protesting, ignoring the fact that millions of Nigerians, they are within in spirit and soul, although they might not be on the protest front. And finally, I also think the president failed to acknowledge the fact that the protests involve all forms of age demographics, socio-economic demographics. You have the elderly people, especially in several parts of the country, in the Southwest, that are protesting. These elderly people are not the younger ones that people were focusing on. You have middle-aged men and women that are equally on the protest ground. A good number of them are employed, a good number of them, they are daily income earners. So it's not just about politicians. Politicians might be providing some support, and they might not be providing some support. But a cross-sectional analysis of the protesters shows that it's cut across different social economic demographics in the country. And that is why it is important for the president and his advisors and his minister to have the thing of their thoughts, of the analysis of the protest. The protest is a feedback about the poorly thought out policies that they have implemented. And hopefully we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of the policy. For example, the issue of the solutions that the president mentioned.
Before we get into that, we're going to let you speak, but we also have Mr. Timothy, and remember, we're just taking a cursory view of exactly what they thought about, what you guys think about the president's address. So if you would please give us a little bit of time so we can also have Mr. Timothy's submission regarding the address, please. Mr. Timothy, please.
Mr. Timothy, please go ahead. And I'm very specific. I would like to ask, versus the content of the speech versus the protesters' demand, what do you think that the content spoke to their demands or addressed their demands, the demands of the protesters?
The president has succeeded in just telling us what he has achieved within the year. But the content of the demand of the people is not met. It is just one, I think it is the basic need that the people are asking: food, good education, security. That's all the people are asking. Now, when you look at the content of the presidency, aside the only fact that he commiserates with the people who lost their loved ones on the protest ground, his next statement that seems not well with me and with plenty Nigerians is that they should shield from protest. Now, protest is the civil right of every democratic republic. Every democratic republic has the right to protest. And every democratic republic has the right to be heard, because democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That aspect, without thinking towards that, it is not governance at all. Sorry to say, it is not governance at all. So if I were the president, I will have first of all addressed their basic issue, or our basic issue, sorry, not their, our basic issue, which is food, security, and education, and many more. The president has not done justice to the whole situation. Instead, what he ends up doing is saying what he has achieved over the years, and that's not right at all. Now, in some countries, even in this country, what people don't know is that there's what we call the fundamental right, and there's what we call the non-justiciable right. Now, the non-justiciable right addresses the issue of food, address the issue of security, address the issue of education, which ought to be free. But because it is not justiciable, let me not bother us with law terms. Because not justiciable, it is not implicated like the chapter 4, which is section 35, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Is not addressed as so. So I feel the president has not really addressed our issue. He has only succeeded in telling us what he is going to do, which is not done. Looking at it very, very well, I believe that the problem of this country, especially when it comes to food, is easy to solve. Let me give you instances. And it has a lot of rice, which I've talking with people along the protest, I realized that one of the common foods they keep on emphasizing is rice. Taraba has a lot of rice. Yobe has the largest rice factory in the country. Yobe alone can feed Nigeria on rice alone. So I believe the president should look at that very well and see how he can harness these gifts within these regions that will provide us with the food we are talking about. The security, if Nigeria can go to Gabon, if Nigeria can go to Sierra Leone, if Nigeria can go to other countries to solve security issue within a year, Nigeria shouldn't be a problem. But we are facing up to 11 to 12 years now based on security alone. I feel the president has not addressed our issue enough. And the protests, left to me, should continue. But peacefully, I am against violence in all forms. I know where I'm coming from, and violence is the last thing I would like to beat. But I feel the protest should be done peacefully. And the interference of political thugs should be discouraged. That's all for now.
Now, I must say, and you talked about food, you talked about education, you talked about the economic situation in the country, and that, you know, the president's speech has not been able to address those core concerns of the protesters, and that he only reeled out his achievements. But I have to say that all of the achievements he reeled out, as you said, are strategies and initiatives and reforms and economic decisions that have had to be made, that he said that have had to be made to steer the nation to economic prosperity. He mentioned, you know, agricultural reforms. He mentioned student loans. He mentioned empowering the youth with, you know, entrepreneurship empowerment programs. He also mentioned quite a number of reforms in the oil and gas sector and said that there were two major FDI, should I say, investments that have come in, foreign direct investment that have come in, that are over half a trillion naira, I guess. Sorry, $500 billion. That's what he said. But I stand to be corrected. And he made mentions of these reforms. But all of this would definitely take time in its fruition. And he's asked for Nigerians to be patient. Can't we be patient and wait? Are those not reforms good enough?
Those reforms are good enough.
Yeah.
They are good enough, but this is my own take when it comes to reform. First of all, you make do of what you have. You make do of what you have. Let me give you an instance. I remember when the former Vice President, Professor Yemi Osibanjo, was on throne. He made a statement at a certain point. He said, Aba market is enough to take care of the country. There are innovations without necessarily importing any from it. Without necessarily importing any from any country. Nigeria is gifted both in innovation and also in all aspects you can think of. In all aspects you can think of, Nigeria is gifted. So some of the reforms he's bringing, I believe, are good. They are good. They are good. But the first thing that we need to address, what do we have at hand that we can use? Entrepreneur is good. Before he came to power, we have been entrepreneurs. Even after he leaves, we are still going to be entrepreneurs. But the thing that the thing that I feel that he should have considered is the blueprint that the former administration has laid on that aspect alone. I'm not talking about other aspects. On that aspect alone, there's the issue of SME. And I believe that SME should be explored. But first of all, the main thing that has brought this whole thing to a fall is the removal of fuel subsidy. Hello? Is the removal of fuel subsidy.
We would like you to respond to that question before I ask another question. Jeleli, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. The first thing I'd like to say is this. The president has an unusual understanding of his policies. And it seems to assume that the policies are going to be yielding results. As a policy scholar, policies we teach a student that policies are not meant to assist at the expense of the well-being of the people. And the very core of any policy is to help enhance the living condition and the overall well-being of the people. So when you implement a policy or policies, and the policies are worsening the well-being condition of the people, the consequence of that policy is a feedback that needs to be considered to revisit the policy, the jig or replace the policy. Because when you form a policy, there are underlying assumptions about the existing condition that you would have to consider formulating the policy. The underlying assumptions will be wrong. And if the underlying assumptions are wrong, definitely the policies will have negative consequences on the well-being of the people. And I believe this applies to the policies that Mr. President defended vehemently. Secondly, the other thing about policies is that we rely on data, including existing data and projected data, to formulate policy. Because the very core of any policy is data. So the data that is relied upon to formulate a particular policy may be faulty. And what is evident is that the data that was relied upon for the removal of oil subsidy contains a lot of missing components. And one of those missing components that I've explained when I appeared in one of the programs is the possible impact of the removal of oil subsidy on the well-being of the people. There was nobody that could say that they saw categorically the data that they relied upon to remove oil subsidy and whether they did the what-if analysis in policy to determine how the removal of oil subsidy was going to affect all social economy demographic in the country. As we usually say in policy, you can only know for the fact the true consequence of a particular policy after the fact. And the after the fact situation, as it is currently, is the abyssal, unacceptable condition in the country, the unacceptable level of hardship that people of all socioeconomic demographic in the country are experiencing. Let's not get into each of these policies one after the other. The president spoke about mechanization of the agri-food system in the country and the fact that he has requested that export duties be removed on the prices of certain food commodities. Well, we need to look at this from many perspectives. Are those a response to the issue of food inflation and food costs that we have in the country? I don't think so. Because when you look at the current food insecurity that people are experiencing in Nigeria, there are multiple facets to it. We have the food availability component. And under availability component, there are multiple factors under that. One, the cost of hiring labor to work on farms. As a result of the removal of farm subsidy, the cost of hiring labor have increased. And I'll give you a very good example. When farmers hire labor to work on their farm, before the beginning of the growing season, they usually reach an agreement before the first subsidy removal. And the same thing applies.
Now, Mr. Jeleli,
but they usually give
Mr.
the farm labor.
Mr. Jeleli, we're almost out of time.
Hello.
Yes, if you can round up, please.
Please let me get done with this one.
Yes.
It's a very quick one.
Thank you.
Yeah. So they usually pay them Okada. Okada is the reward for working on their farm throughout the growing season. Before subsidy removal, an Okada was going for 250,000, and another version was going for 450,000. As soon as the subsidy was removed, the price of Okada jumped from 450,000 to 1.2 million naira. How does the importation of farm machinery at your assistance?
Yeah.
More so that majority of the farmers that we are talking about, these are small scale, poor resource farmers. So if policy is not addressing the cost of farm labor, and there was nothing in the speech that spoke to this, then let's not go to the issue of food prices.
I would like to let you go to that issue, Mr. Jeleli, but we don't have too much time, and we have a guest with us in the studio here. But thank you very much, Mr. Jeleli. Do stay, but I also want to introduce someone in the studio here with us, and that's Abdulateef Ahmed here. He's our digital news editor at News Central. You're welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
We were asking the gentleman about the details of the president's address. Very interesting address. He talked about the protests. He talked about support for the protests and also getting the economy back on track. I'm not going to say too much. I'm going to let you tell us what you thought about the details of that address.
Well, the president has spoken. A lot of, concerns has been expressed even before the president's speech. What we had expected, observing or connecting the dots from what has happened elsewhere in Bangladesh, Kenya, and the rest, is that the president was going to address the nation before the protest. Because, again, if people say they want to protest, it's their legitimate right to protest. However, if you have your ears right on ground, you understand what their concerns are. Don't rubbish it or say it does not matter.
Do you feel he rubbished it in any way?
No, the concern was that we can avoid unnecessary deaths. We can avoid destructions of lives and properties. And so if he had addressed the nation ahead of that, there's a chance that people who are sound-minded will be like, okay, yes, we had wanted to protest, but you know what? He has addressed our concerns. But even now that he has spoken up, there are concerns that the protesters had itemized that he didn't touch on. Most of the issues that he touched on were the macroeconomics, the micro, the very minutest issues that the protesters were concerned about, he didn't touch on it. So there's a problem.
And some
Right.
of these details would be what exactly? These minutiae that the protesters are agitating for?
Okay, so one of the concerns that he actually talked about was fuel subsidy, the fact that there was not going to be any reversal of fuel subsidy, and that we had saved money, about 9-point-something trillion because of the removal of subsidy. What we want to know, for example, was what happened to the refineries that we had refineries that were paid for, in quote, revamping of the refineries. Because if you had removed fuel subsidy, which some of us agree was a sound judgment, it was because you anticipate that there will be refining capacity in the country. We do not have that refining capacity. The time that NNPC had said the refineries, the Port Harcourt refineries will start, it hasn't started. The question is, what happened to the monies that were funneled into revamping the refineries? Because if you are saving money on one hand, where are you channeling this money to? The monies that were saved yesterday, where were they channeled to? So the poverty, the end bad governance campaign at the moment is because you have not addressed the poverty that is cutting through Nigerians, right, left, center, from the north to the south. That is the issue that must be addressed. So, well, you can talk about all the big things you've done, but the minutest things, the man on the street wants to know, how are some of these policies affecting his life?
Now, I must first of all make a correction. Earlier, I said that the president mentioned foreign direct investment that would come into the nation to being $500 billion. I stand corrected, it's $500 million. So I wanted to make that correction. Now, one of our gentlemen here on video chat earlier was making mention of all of these reforms and said that it was him reeling out his achievements in the last 1 year and not translating, to the core demands of the protesters. And now you seem to be of the same opinion as well, that it has not addressed the protesters and been able to address the minute issue that the everyday common man is protesting about. Then how best can he do that? Because as president, I like to think that he's looking at the nation as singular and would address it as singular. So how then can he break it down to come to the micro and be able to address those things? Because student loan is all Nigerians, entrepreneurship is all Nigerians. Fuel subsidy removal, when you think about it in and of itself, they have mentioned time and time again that the new Petroleum Act does not make room for subsidy after June 2023. And so those are the issues that the government has also faced, and they had to be able to. And they've also introduced the CNG program for cars to be able to not run on CNG, which he mentioned that this initiative is visible and a cheaper alternative to the cost of fuel for motorists. So how best can he do that?
Well, some of the problems we have in Nigeria is that we do a lot of big talk. You talk big and then it doesn't translate into action. Let me give you an example. When Nigerians had mustered their patience, their energy, their prayers, their, listening to leaders, in quotes, when they were earning 35,000 as minimum wage, how many states were paying minimum wage of 35,000? So governors and leaders watched in real time how poverty was weaponized, how people were subjected to extreme hunger. And then this hunger has built up over time. And then when their leaders are saying, you know what, we understand you're hungry. We have increased your minimum wage to 70,000, for example. And they're saying, we don't believe you. You have said it countless times that you have increased our minimum wage, but we cannot see it translate into real time. So the same thing is happening. At least 18 states in Nigeria were not paying 35,000 minimum wage. So the president can say, I've increased your minimum wage to 70,000, I've increased it to 700,000, I've increased it to 1 million. We can't freaking see it on the streets, on the lives of people. So if you have a scenario where you only talk big and you do not implement whatever it is you say, it translates to the same thing. People will be impoverished, there'll be serious hunger in the land, and it will snowball into reactions that like this that you see. Because, for example, you will see that ahead of the protest, you are supposed to speak to Nigerians, to the man on the street, but you have the president using the monarchs, the religious leaders, the traditional leaders. President, speak to your country. The leaders alone did not vote for you. The men and women on the street voted for you. So yes, you can talk about you introducing student loans. The student loans that were disbursed so far only affected, I think, about 20 tertiary institutions. The total number of people who have benefited from it and are less than the amount of students who were in my own undergraduate days in my university. It means that it is just very little from amongst, the whole
What about
picture.
the argument that that's only just begun? What about the argument that these policies need time to actually manifest? What about the argument that they've only just had 14 months to actually set this? Regarding the student loans and the navigation of funds there, he talked about 97% debt servicing, 97% of the country's income was what was spending, or rather on debt servicing, reduced to 68% and then pushed into services like the student loan. But that needs time.
I agree with
where's the credit to that argument?
I agree with that. But there are lots of areas where the monies Nigeria has, budgeted and disbursed for certain things have not been recovered. It has not been used for what it should be used for, and nobody's asking the question.
What about?
Okay, tell me.
Nobody has actually said, okay, what timeline do we need? When should we wait for the execution of these?
Yeah, so it's fine. Timelines are okay. But if we were to ask, how about the other timelines? The president has made a lot of promises, and I gave you one example with the refineries. We were told, the GMD of NNPC said, the refineries will start by December last year. Very logical, but it has not started. Nobody has come up to tell Nigerians, we are sorry, we understand that this was what we said earlier, but this is the challenge now. So no accountability, no consequences for the fact that someone promised Nigerians and did not fulfill that promise. Nobody was sacked. Essentially, we have a system where people speak big and nothing happened on the street. So Nigerians are tired of that. So don't be surprised that in spite of the president's speech, people can still hit the street and say, we are not convinced. We do not believe. It could have been different if the president had addressed the nation before the protest started, meaning he understands that people are angry, people are hungry, people are disgruntled, are angry, are disconnected with what is happening. There is an appeal that can go to Nigerians that may mitigate, all of this. And again, reward and penalties for bad behavior. Reward for good behavior and penalties for bad behavior.
Abdul Latif, at the risk of, playing devil's advocate, and again, I have to be balanced, unfortunately, the perks of my job, right? Don't you think that we put a lot of emphasis on the center? Because many of these issues that we are mentioning about, sometimes the governors are the one we should be holding accountable. Sometimes as a local government, a chairman or the councillors or the House of Rep or the State House of Rep or the Senate. Those are the ones that we should be holding accountable, and as well as the opposition. Don't you think that there's too much emphasis on the center? Now, as what I'm gonna let you answer that question, but also to our guests that are online as well, and that's Dr. Jeleli and as well as Mr. Timothy. He's also online, legal practitioner. So I'm going to direct the question to three of you because everyone seems to be talking the presidency, the presidency, the presidency, but there are other persons as well who are part of the government who these issues are at their arm of affairs. The government, the president has addressed the nation and said, I hereby ask for a halt to this protest. I am open for dialogue. But some of these reforms are at the desk of these other officials. So let me start with you, Abdul Latif, here in the studio, and then I'll go to the gentleman.
Yes, I totally agree with you that we put a lot of emphasis at the center. The problem with Nigeria, I mean, maybe the followers, the citizens, is that a lot of Nigerians do not understand civic education. The fact that you voted someone into power does not mean the end of your civic rights. You must continue to demand for accountability from your, for every level of government you have. For example, if you look at the entire, what Nigeria spends, the federal government takes less than 30% of whatever it is, and the rest of it goes to the states. Only recently, we had a Supreme Court judgment where the governors were said to not have access to, no longer have access to the local government funds. What we used to know is that governors had weaponized poverty in Nigeria because essentially these monies are trapped in their hands. They do not allow these funds to get to where they should get to. And that is always, the ticket for violence, for anger, for poverty. Because again, what needs to be done at the local government level must be done at local government level. And that is why, regardless of all the semantics, the legalese that people talk about, joint accounts and all that, those are the, those are the villages and, the nooks and crannies of Nigeria have had access to government at the center. So center is relative. They have difficult access to Abuja, they have difficult access to their state capital, but they have easier access to their local government chairman, and they can hold them by the neck and say, you know what, we got the information that you got this amount of money. Where is that money? What has it been used for? That makes that feeling of ownership at the level of local government easier. You focus less at the center when you know that there's a level of accountability at the regional level. But when you always concentrate everything at the center, and so I would commend the president for fighting that fight for the average Nigerians. A lot of Nigerians don't know that this is a fight for them. But it will not translate into anything if Nigerians on the street do not have the power to vote for their own leaders. Because again, if you have a local government chairman that was imposed on you by someone from elsewhere, he will do his own bidding. So you must, again, move from understanding that now you have access to local government funds to voting for the right person, who will lead you at the local government level, and then you begin to demand for accountability. Of course, knowing that certain things you demand from the president or the governor is supposed to be done by the guys at the local government.
For accountability and transparency, the last President Muhammadu Buhari released, he created an app. I seem to forget the name of that app, but that app was so that Nigerians could go there to track projects and to track these other things. And so past administrations have tried their possible best to find ways to hold government accountable and officials accountable and be as transparent as possible. Is that not enough? And in this case, I see Timothy laughing there. And in this case, also local government autonomy as well, being able to release money now to local government, so there's the local government chairman, so there's no bottleneck of saying that they didn't release any money. So what more do Nigerians want? Timothy, I'm going to start with you. Timothy, I'm starting with you. I think Timothy.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, accountability for the governors should start from the presidency, because all allocation is gotten from the president. All allocation is gotten from the president. If the president or the federal government is serious about we holding our governors accountable, knowing fully well, with all due respect, knowing fully well that 60% of Nigerians are not educated, the best he should do is that after those allocations are given to each state, it should be published in the dailies. It should be announced on all the national TVs. This is how much your governor has collected. This is how much I've given.
But they make those announcements. They go on the papers every single time there's a FAC allocation. The amount is posted. Yes. It's posted on every dailies. All the states, the contributions down to the last kobo.
Very well, very well. That's my own take on that. It's the only way that we'll be able to know, oh, our governor is giving so amount, and we have not benefited from it. And then the protests or whatever the demand will be properly channeled. But now, Nigerians do not, I can tell you 80% of Nigerians, I inclusive, don't know how much the president allocates to each state. And now, once there's a problem, we only see the federal government, we don't see the state governor, because we don't know how much the state governor is given. In fact, I met somebody that said the person controlling the economy of Nigeria is President Tinubu. So he doesn't know any governor. So his protest is for Tinubu. I was at the protest ground. But at a point it got violent. I had to back off. And then I think that's a good step to take so that the people will know. I keep on emphasizing, I will say it again and again and again. National Orientation Agency has a big work. The reason why some citizens behave the way they do is because they don't even know they are right. They don't even know how to approach certain issues. So they go against it. I met somebody saying that we should burn all the government properties. And the funny thing he was showing me was a public school, a government school. So I asked him, if you burn down that school, it is the children of the masses that go to that school. Have you benefited? or is it to your disadvantage? And he kept quiet. So I feel not knowing how much is allocated to every state is the reason why the protest is aimed at the center. But if every state will know how much their governor is given, I can tell you confidently that the protest will be channeled properly. Because I, for one, has always believed that it is not about the presidency not giving, it's because the people didn't know. But as to local government autonomy, I have asked a question, and I'm still asking. If local government are given autonomy, which I'm in support, what are the strategies on ground to see that it is still the governors that own those local government and not the federal government? Because if they are given autonomy, it means that it is the INEC that will conduct the election. Anyways, let's stop here.
Well, thank you very much. But still, let's take a look at the president's address when he talked about infrastructure for development. He talked about taking some monies that have been seen or realized from the past and navigating them into other items, much like transportation, for instance. He talked about the Lagos-Calabar Highway. He also talked about the Sokoto-Lagos Highway. He also talked about the fact that these are supposed to help the development of the economy. Many people have argued that along these paths, there don't seem to be any economic values. However, he's strong on the opinion that this will bring Nigerians prosperity when it comes to the realization of funds from the development that could come from these infrastructure. Are these misplaced, or is he on the right track regarding development and the siphoning of these monies to these projects?
It is both.
Yeah, so,
I would like Mr. Jeleli to please respond.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think one of the issues we need to think more carefully is how we facilitate development. During the 8 years administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, one singular quote-unquote achievement we head on to, and on which the current president campaigned for the election of his predecessors, was the issue of infrastructure. I listened to all the campaigns by the APC, even during the election of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. They were like, oh, we did this much road, we did that much road. And the question remains, are roads enough or sufficient to address crushing issues of development, such as poverty, such as rising cost of labor, and etc., and etc. The fact remains the obvious, not necessarily so, because you must be intentional about how infrastructural development are going to address the core underdevelopment issues facing people at the local level. So the fact that they're investing a lot of money to roads does not mean that the roads will generate the wherewithal, the resources needed for local people to address development issues affecting them. And I think this is one of the missing links in the conversation that we've been having on infrastructural development. It may be that we've been investing or doing infrastructural development in the wrong way. That is one way to think about it. The other way to think about it is this. Do we have those infrastructures that can assist the local people to address their local needs? For example, I've been to some parts of Nigeria, including Ekiti, in Lagos, and Ibadan, that I've visited. And I usually go to the interior. When you get into the interior, what you need to do is to abandon the narrative of Mr. President. Development is absolutely absent in those areas.
Dr. Jeleli, I get what you're saying regarding the immediate needs of the people across Nigeria, but regarding the specificity of that highway, these two highways that are being that are under construction, especially the Lagos-Calabar one, how necessary is it to the economy of Nigeria, do you think? And then you could talk about the Sokoto-Lagos one, which is also being suggested.
I mean, they are necessary, but they are not necessary, but I won't think they are immediate priorities that can address the concerns of the streets. These are long-term issues And we are talking about immediate needs that need to be addressed. People are dying of hunger. It's an immediate development problem. The Lagos-Calabar road is not going to solve that immediately. So we need the president to think about infrastructural development that can assist us to address the immediate problems and the short-term problems. This road you are talking about is in the long term. How is that road going to address in the immediate or medium term the disposable income at the hands of the people? How is it going to address the strangulated and the depressed, severely depressed, purchasing power parity of people at the household level, at the individual level? There's no way such a big project is going to address to those concerned in the immediate. And that is why Mr. President needs to come down to the level of the street. He doesn't obviously understand what is playing out in the country. If he does, he will understand that he needs some immediate policies that will be addressing those concerns. And he needs to work with arrays of stakeholders. He needs to abandon calling imams, calling pastors, calling all these traditional leaders to the fillers. These are not policymakers. They do not understand what we need to address those problems. He needs his minister to go and work with people at the local level and figure out the low-hanging fruits that can be worked around to solve the problems in the immediate. We are talking about people who cannot afford to eat food. We are talking about people who cannot afford to pay the bills of their children. Let me give you a very good example in the university. The University of Lagos is paying, at least to my knowledge, 200 million naira a month in electricity bill. And the same applies to all major universities in the country. Only recently, NUC came up, and Committee of Vice Chancellor, wherever they call themselves, they said students will have to pay 80,000 naira in the average as part of the fees they will be paying next semester. That means in some cases, electricity bill alone, incorporated into the tuitions and fees of students, we run into around the regime of 100,000 naira. Tell me, where will a typical Nigeria, just 100,000 naira for electricity bill, one item? Think about other items. Maybe we are looking in the regime of 400,000 naira, 350,000 naira. Where will they get this money? We have not even spoken about rents. Landlords are running after people, increasing rent exorbitantly. Where will people get money to pay for their rent? We need policies that will increase the purchasing power parity of households. That is not what the president is talking about.
All right, Mr.
And
Dr.
for this
Jeleli.
thing to happen, we need to speak exactly to this concern.
Okay,
and
then.
that is my concern as one of the people that campaign vigorously for this presidency.
All right, then.
That
Thank you, Dr.
all his energy to get this presidency elected.
Great.
We need to tell ourselves the truth. We have failed this country. We have failed our people. The APC has failed itself. And we need to go back to the drawing board and re-examine how best we can bring succor and comfort to the life of our people.
All right, Dr.
This
Jeleli.
is not what we promised them when we solicited their figures. I apologize on behalf of the president. I apologize on behalf of all of us that supported him that we have brought untold hardship to people. We never intended it. Our policy causes, and we need to own this. And we need to have a sober reflection and have a rethink, not to continue to defend what is not working. From all indication, nothing is working in this policy. Addressing the fundamental concerns affecting ordinary Nigerians, and that should be the onerous responsibility of being elected into office. Indeed, we have been aggravating the current situation in the country. We need a rethink of these policies. All
Dr.
these
Jeleli, thank you for that
policies
very passionate response there.
Better in Western world seems not to be working in
Thank
this
you,
country.
but we have to round this segment up, and I want to do that in the studio here with our guests. So now regarding infrastructure and the fact that, like Dr. Jeleli just told, and also Timothy also suggested, that the president is not looking at the needs of the people now. What do you think regarding infrastructure and his address regarding infrastructure and funding infrastructure for the betterment of development? Please, if you can make it short because we're out of time.
Okay, so I'm going to focus on food security. I mean, one of the key drivers of inflation in Nigeria is food. Once, we have rising cost of food, every other thing will be affected. Let's have modernized farming systems in Nigeria. Roads are not just all the infrastructure we need. In the north, there is no access to farms. There are no irrigated farms, modernized farms, and farms that can give us the food we need. We have all the lands that we require. We have everything in terms of labor and all that, but we are still rudimentary in our farming technology.
Well, he talked about that. He talked about
you talk about it. Can we can't see it.
For mechanization, rather.
We can't see it. We can't see it because if we see it, we will have food in abundance in the south.
And the argument is that these roads are supposed to help. I don't know if you agree with me.
It is not just the roads. It's not just the roads. What is the farming techniques that we have in Yobe, in Zamfara? Because these guys are, they are overwhelmed with the activities of bandits and miscreants and murderers. So you must give us farms that are modernized, that can compete with Holland, Netherlands, and all biggest farming nations of the world, so that we do not need to import. We spend too much forex on importation, and it is not acceptable. It is something that we must stop. And that is where the infrastructure, has to go into.
Abdulatif, you just reminded me of one of the women. There was a video that showed of her. She was with her child, a baby, infant baby, at the ground at Abuja on day one of the protest. And she said that her husband had died at the farms in Katsina. And so as we're talking about, mechanized farming and, we're deploring ways where the food can be stored and transportation of the food can get, to other parts of the country, and we have the land. Let's not forget that there are people, there are farmers who are also losing their lives. All this infrastructure can be made and be done, but if lives are being lost on the farms, to what end?
But it is because,
it's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I know, but these guys who are responsible for, murderous killings of farmers, have you heard of any prosecution? None of them have been prosecuted. So it continues like that because nobody is holding them accountable. So yes, you'll kill bandits. Yes, you'll deal with miscreants. But have you prosecuted them? We are not seeing that.
Well, Abdulatif, I want to appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Much.
Abdulatif Ahmed, he is News Central's in-house digital news editor, and also joining us earlier on via video chat, we had Timothy Estefanos. He is a legal practitioner, and we also had Dr. Jeleli Adebiyi. He is a scholar and practitioner as well. They both, he's an academia, I'll put it there. He's in academia. And thank you, gentlemen, everyone, for joining us today and just having a very insightful discussion on the presidency's speech.